The doll maker's curse. The last toy he ever made, they said the old man never smiled, not once, not in all the years he lived in the house at the end of Calle del Rosario, where the shutters stayed closed even in summer, and the air always felt like something was watching. They called him Mang Elias the doll maker, and the children dared each other to throw rocks at his rusted gate. But none ever did twice, because strange things happened to the ones who mocked the house. No one remembered. When he arrived, only that one day the house was empty. Then it wasn't, and that after he came the street grew quieter, as if even the wind was scared to pass by his door. They said he crafted dolls so lifelike. They breathed, some swore, they blinked, some even swore, they whispered. And no one really knew who bought them, or where they went, only that on certain nights a pale cart would roll out from his gate, without a driver, without horses, just gliding into the fog. Young Lara didn't believe the stories. She was 15, curious, brave, too brave. And she liked old things, antiques, toys that once belonged to someone else. Her mother was a midwife, often gone for nights, and her father had left long ago. So the silence in their home was something she filled with stories and music, and sometimes wandering eyes toward that shuttered house, wondering what the man really did in there. She got her answer one Wednesday afternoon. When she found the doll, it wasn't inside the house, it was behind it in the alley, where she chased a kitten into a pile of leaves and broken tiles. And there, half buried, was a strange wooden box, carved with vines and angels and a single eye in the center. And when she opened it, the air felt colder, and inside was a doll, a girl doll in a red velvet dress with glass eyes that looked far too real, and a porcelain face that had no cracks, no dust, as if someone had just placed it there and walked away. She brought it home. Lara placed the doll on her shelf beside her music box, and a stuffed bear she'd had since she was small, but the doll stood out, its head tilted slightly, its glass eyes reflecting too much of the room even in the dark, and its lips curved in a way that wasn't quite a smile, wasn't quite anything. It was as if the expression changed depending on how you felt that night. The house was quiet, only the ticking of the clock and the occasional creak of wood breathing, as old houses do. But Lara couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the doll. She had turned its face away, but every time she blinked it felt closer to the edge of the shelf. Its feet, just a little more, turned toward the bed. She laughed at herself, tried to sleep again, told herself it was just shadows, just tricks of the moonlight slipping through the slats. But then came the whisper, not a voice, not loud, not even a sound. Really just a feeling, a press against the air in her ears, something that tickled the edges of thought, like a memory she didn't remember having. And she sat up, her heart quickened. Play with me, She didn't hear it exactly, she felt it inside her chest like someone had dropped a pebble into a pond. And the ripples hit her spine. She looked at the shelf. The doll hadn't moved, but something was different, its hair maybe, or the angle of its head, or how the shadows seemed to cling to its hands. She picked it up again. Its body was lighter than she remembered, and its back was carved with the same symbols as the box shed found it in. But when she turned it over, she noticed something new. Beneath the velvet skirt was a small latch, and a tiny keyhole, almost invisible, and stitched into the hem in red thread were words she didn't recognize. She didn't sleep that night. The next day she went back to the alley, but the box was gone. Not just gone, vanished. No leaves, no broken tiles, not even a mark on the soil, as if the earth itself had erased her steps. But she wasn't ready to let it go. She needed answers, so she did something no one dared. She knocked on Mang Elias' gate. The metal rang out like a bell in fog. And for a moment she thought nothing would happen, but then slowly the gate creaked open by itself. Not fully, just enough for her to slip through, and she did, her heart pounding, her hands trembling, but her curiosity pulling her forward like a thread wound too tight. Inside the yard, the air was wrong, heavy, and still, like a place that hadn't breathed in decades. Dolls hung from trees, not swinging, not moving, just watching. Their glass eyes clouded, their limbs pale and thin, and each had a number carved into its chest. The door opened before she could knock, and he stood there, old, thin, hollow eyes, and a long coat stained with dust and varnish, his hands calloused and trembling slightly, as if always carving. Even when empty, he didn't speak. He just stepped aside and let her in. The house was worse. Inside, thousands of dolls, some in cabinets, some on chairs, some watching from high shelves, their faces frozen in laughter, in screams, in silence. And on the table was a book, thick bound in cracked leather, covered in ash and strings of hair and bone. He pointed to it and finally spoke. "You found her, didn't you?" Lara nodded, unsure whether to lie or cry. "She was never meant to be found," he said, his voice dry like parchment. "She was the last, the one I poured everything into, but she chose. And now she has you." Lara asked what he meant, but he just turned the pages of the book, and there it was, a sketch, the doll in the red dress, her name written below in looping letters, Marcella. Marcella was not always a doll. She was once a girl of 10, daughter of a woman who could see spirits, and a man who carved wood into shapes that moved on their own. She lived in the hills far from town, where people whispered of curses and winds that carried voices. And one day she disappeared, only to be found weeks later at the edge of a cliff, whispering to something no one could see and smiling with glassy eyes. They said she had made a wish, that something heard her and gave her what she wanted, but not the way she Wanted it, they say the doll maker found her in his dreams, that she came to him and said, "Build me again, and I will never leave you." And he carved her from the wood of a drowned tree on the night of a blood moon. He sewed her dress from a woman's burial gown, and used ash from her burned diary to mark her heart. But she was never still, never silent. Each time she was placed in a box, she escaped, found her way into the hands of another child, one who was lonely, one who needed a friend, one who would not question the whispers. And each time she feeds on what you hide. Mang Elias said, regret, sorrow, anger, she grows stronger with each secret you keep. And when she is full, she takes. Lara wanted to throw the doll into fire, into river, into the deepest pit. But she knew it would not matter. The doll had chosen her, and she had already heard the whisper again that morning. Tell me your pain. Lara tried to ignore it. She locked Marcella in a box, wrapped her in blankets, buried the box in the tool shed, and told herself she was done. But at night she heard the knocking, faint at first, then louder, always coming from inside the walls. And her dreams became worse, dreams of red fields and weeping trees, of children with no eyes holding hands in circles, humming the same tune her mother used to sing. Then the dog disappeared. Bante, her old retriever, who never left her side, vanished without a trace. One moment at her feet, the next just gone, and the doll was back on her shelf, not even dusty, her glass eyes wide and clean and her lips slightly open, as if she just finished whispering something only Lara could hear. Lara screamed through her against the wall, but she landed softly as if something caught her. And when Lara looked again, she was sitting upright, her head tilted just so, and her dress smooth and unstained. Lara began to cry. She didn't know why it hurt so much, not just the loss of Bante, but the weight in her chest, the pressure behind her eyes, like memories trying to force themselves out. But they weren't hers, not entirely. She saw things, heard voices, none she knew, but all familiar, like forgotten lullabies. And Marcella was smiling now, the smile more certain, more satisfied. Lara returned to Mang Elias, his house colder, darker. Now the dolls had shifted somehow, some of them closer, some of them missing entirely. And she told him about Bante, about the dreams, about the humming. He didn't seem surprised. She's feeding, he said simply. And if you don't give her what she wants, she'll take more. She always takes more. Lara asked what she wanted. Your worst memory, the thing you buried so deep it rotted, that's what she feeds on, not the memory itself, but your fear of it, your shame. Lara shook her head. She didn't have anything like that. Her life was fine, normal, no tragedies, no trauma. He only stared, then asked, what happened the night your sister fell down the stairs? She froze, her lips parted, but no words came because she hadn't thought about that in years, hadn't spoken her name since her parents started pretending they only had one child. And suddenly she could hear the sound again, bones on wood, a gasp, a soft cry. And the red at the bottom of the steps, and the doll blinked, not a twitch. Not a trick, she saw it clearly. Marcella blinked, once slowly, like someone seeing through Lara for the first time. That night, Lara dreamed of the closet again, the one from her childhood, the one in her sister's room, the one they never opened after the funeral. It stood there in the dark, humming with heat, as if something inside were alive. And Lara stood before it barefoot in a nightgown, her hand on the knob, but unable to turn it. And behind her Marcella stood taller, now her limbs too long, her dress darker, and her eyes glowing faintly. "It's time," Marcella whispered. "Let her out." Lara woke up screaming, the room cold, her breath visible, and the doll sitting on her chest, her tiny hand resting over Lara's heart. The next day, she went to her old house alone, the place long abandoned, vines growing through broken windows, graffiti on walls. But the closet door was still there, untouched, untouched by time, untouched by rot. And she unlocked it slowly, heart hammering. Breath held inside was her sister's diary, dusty and brittle, and a photo of the two of them taken a week before she died, and a scrap of paper with one word scrawled over and over in red ink, "I'm sorry." She began to cry, and when she turned around, Marcella was sitting on the floor watching her, arms folded, legs crossed, eyes wide. Lara took the photo and the diary back home and sat on the floor beside the doll. For the first time she spoke freely, told her about the guilt, about the fight they had that night, how she pushed her sister, how she never meant for her to fall, how her parents believed it was an accident because Lara never cried, never told the truth, and how that silence had grown inside her like mold. The room felt warmer, the shadows pulled back just slightly. And for a moment the doll looked softer, less sharp, more like a toy than a trap. And Lara thought maybe, just maybe, that was enough, maybe it was over. But the phone rang, a voice she didn't know, but somehow recognized, asked if she remembered Elena Cruz, a girl from high school who vanished after prom night. And Lara dropped the phone because she did remember, she remembered too well. And the guilt returned, fresh, heavy, poisoned with the memory of laughter before silence. The last time she saw Elena's face framed in a car window, mouthing words Lara never heard. And the doll stood up on her own. Lara sat paralyzed on the floor as Marcella walked across the room, her tiny feet silent on the tiles, her head twitching slightly with every step. She stopped by the window and stared out, not like a toy, but like a thing that remembered the outside world. Lara's breath caught in her throat. The phone still buzzed on the floor, the caller long gone. But the guilt they left behind remained like smoke. Lara crawled toward it, slowly picked it up, trembling fingers scrolling to a name she hadn't seen in years. Elena, she found an old message dated years back, unopened, unread, still glowing faintly with that blue light of the forgotten. The message simply said, "Did you hear it too?" Lara stared at those words, feeling the knot in her chest twist tighter. She whispered, "No." But it wasn't true. She did hear it. She always had the humming, the voice at night, the whisper behind mirrors. She thought she was crazy, thought it was grief. But now she knew they all heard it. Lara drove back to Mang Elia's. Before the sun rose, his door was already open. As if he knew she was coming, his hands shaking, as he offered her a book bound in red thread, covered in dust, the pages brittle with age and written in a mix of Latin, Spanish, and something else older, something that curled the eyes when you tried to read it too fast. This belonged to the original doll maker. He whispered, the one who made her in the old country before she was smuggled here in a coffin of wood and silk. They thought she was art. They didn't know she was grief made flesh. Lara opened the book and saw the sketches: dolls with human teeth, dolls with hollow chests, dolls with eyes too real, labeled with names that weren't names, but screams spelled backward, prayers bent out of shape. And in the center of the book, a page torn out, only a few faint lines remaining. She has no master, she feeds on pain, memory, silence. She enters through guilt and stays through forgetting. Lara looked at Mang Elias, his eyes wet. You can't bury her, you have to end her, but to end her you have to give her everything. Lara nodded, even though she didn't understand. Back in her apartment, she found Marcella sitting by the fireplace, hands folded, eyes closed, like she was waiting. And Lara sat across from her, pulled out the diary, the photo, the scraps of memory, and opened her mouth and told everything about her sister and Elena and the boy from the bridge and the fire at camp, and the door she never opened in her grandmother's house, and the thing she saw under her bed once that she still told herself was a dream, and the woman who stared at her through the window for 5 nights, straight before vanishing. She told it all, even the parts that didn't make sense, even the ones that did. And Marcella changed her eyes, dimmed her smile, faded, her limbs sagged like the bones inside were tired. And the room grew quiet, softer, like the silence after a storm. And for a moment Lara thought she did it, until she turned around. And the room was no longer hers, it was her apartment, but not quite. The walls were too tall, the windows wrong, the light outside pale and pulsing like it came from underwater. And the shadows were watching her, whispering names of people she forgot she knew. And Marcella was gone, but in her place were dozens of dolls, all dressed the same, all with her face, each one humming the same lullaby over and over, over and over. And they began to move, not toward her, but around her, forming a circle, their heads tilting their mouths, opening their song, growing louder. And in the center, a door appeared, wooden black with red carvings, and Lyra knew without question that was the last door. She stepped forward, turned the knob, and felt her heart slow, her breath shallow. And when the door opened, she saw the room from her childhood. Her sister was as she remembered, short hair, chipped tooth that never got fixed, wearing the same pajamas from that night, and smiling softly. "You found her," her sister whispered. "You found the one who keeps the guilt." Lyra collapsed, sobbing. She crawled to her sister, grabbed her, held her, begged for forgiveness over and over. And her sister nodded, her small hands brushing Lyra's tears away. "She needed your truth," her sister said, "not your sorrow." The dolls outside the room stopped singing, the silence almost too loud, and the room began to dissolve piece by piece, folding inward like paper burning. Without fire, her sister hugged her one last time and said, "Let her rest now." Lyra woke up on the floor of her apartment alone. Marcella, still sitting by the fireplace, her eyes now gray, her dress dusty, her limbs unmoving like a doll should be. And for the first time Lyra felt peace, not relief, peace. She picked up Marcella and wrapped her gently. Cloth, placed her in a wooden box, and buried her in the cemetery, not as a curse, but as a child lost long ago. She said a prayer, not from a book but from her heart, and left a small toy beside the grave. Days passed, the humming stopped, the mirrors no longer shimmered, the dreams became dreams again. Months later, Lyra moved to a smaller place, one without attics or closets. She kept no dolls and told no stories, and she slept soundly until one night she opened a drawer, and there inside, wrapped in silk, was a single porcelain hand holding a photo of her and a girl she didn't remember. But in the photo they were laughing, and behind them a shadow with glass eyes and vanished, and her sister was waiting.
If you enjoyed this terrifying story, let us know in the comments below. Hit that like button to help us bring more cursed tales and dark legends to life. Don't forget to share this video with your friends, but warn them first. And if you dare, subscribe to this channel, because here in Pinoy Phobia, the horror never ends. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next cursed story, spine-chilling folklore, or true paranormal encounter from the shadows of the Philippines. Remember, some stories are meant to be heard, but others are meant to be warnings. Thank you for watching, and remember, whatever happens, don't look back.